What's up, guys? For the first time in franchise history, the Seattle Kraken are in the playoffs, but it's not going to be an easy task. They're facing the champions of last year, the Colorado Avalanche. Yes, Gabriel Landeskog will be out for the remainder of the playoffs, but this Colorado team is very strong. In terms of their face-off percentage, they're close to the bottom, but it's understandable when you look at their center depth right now. Losing Nazem Kadri is a huge loss, but also a lot of centers were injured throughout this season. But heading into the playoffs, you have Seattle, who is fourth for goals, and Colorado, who's 10th for goals. And arguably, Seattle has the best winger depth, and Colorado, being the champions of the Stanley Cup last year, have a lot of expectations. But can the Seattle Kraken upset the Colorado Avalanche?
Well, I think it is possible. You look at what Seattle's done. I think even offensively this season, they had a lot of guys that really played well. Jared McCann scored 40 goals this season. They had a lot of offense from a lot of their players, which I think saw them be able to go and ultimately qualify for a playoff spot. And what's interesting about Seattle is that they're in this interesting position because they're very much the underdog in this series. But not only are they very much the underdog in this series, they've done it in a way where a lot of people didn't really expect them to make the playoffs. I know they added, during the offseason, and they added a few things or during the season as well to try to help them make them better. But it wasn't anything that I think people saw and said, oh, you know what? We see this team as a playoff team. I think it was more so of it's going to be an improvement of the first year. Whatever happens with Seattle happens. Well, the addition of Matty Beniers has really helped. Jared McCann, like I said, took his game by storm, really played fantastic hockey for Seattle. And then there was obviously other pickups that looked really good. Vince Dunn had a career year. Jordan Eberle, 63 points with them this year. But Seattle really got a lot of scoring from a lot of their players, right? It was one of the teams where it was really a collective effort from not only the Seattle Kraken's top line, but their team as a whole, right? And I think that that's what's becoming very interesting with Seattle is that they did it in a way where they were still able to put the puck in the net, but they did it in a way that was very fun and fascinating for them too. And obviously, Eli Tolvanen was a big addition for them that really helped them a lot. That waiver pickup that they made from Nashville, in 48 games with Seattle this season, he had 27 points, 16 goals, and 11 assists. He really seemed to find his footing with the Seattle Kraken. My only concern with Seattle in this series is, you know, they're not going to have Andre Burakovsky, who, before he got injured at 39 points in 49 games, um, it's going to be a big loss for them. But they had a lot of guys that scored 20 goals, right? McCann at 40, Eberle at 20, Matty Beniers at 24, Daniel Sprong at 21, Bjorkstrand had 20, Jaden Schwartz had 21, and then, a few guys that had over 15 as well, which was very impressive. To me, that's a team that's got a lot of depth, right? And you talked about winger depth. That's a team that's got a lot of depth. They've got a lot of guys that can put the puck in the net on a similar account to other teams across the league, but we haven't seen this many 20 goal scorers on a team in a long time. So I'm excited to see what Seattle can do. I think they'll give Colorado a good run for their money. The problem with Seattle, I think, is going to be the lack of playoff experience that I think is going to ultimately probably lose them this series. And their goaltending is a little bit of an issue for Seattle. And I know people are going to look at this and say, Martin Jones had a really good season this year. He did, right? He played well in the win column. But the problem with Seattle was, Martin Jones played 48 games, 27 wins, 13 losses, 3 overtime losses. Not a big deal. 886 save percentage. That's not great. Philip Grubauer, 17 wins, 14 losses, 4 overtime or shootout losses, 895 save percentage. In order for Seattle to get anywhere in this series, in order for Seattle to be able to win this series, their goaltending is going to have to be up to par and going to be able to have to steal them a couple of games here and there. And that's not to say that their defense is bad. I think their defense is underrated. I don't think it's an elite defensive core, but I think it's done the job this season. But I think that ultimately, if I have to compare the two teams, at least for right now for Seattle, my issue and my worry for Seattle is going to be, is their goaltending going to keep up in a 7-game series potentially against the Colorado Avalanche. Is this going to be a series where Seattle is even going to take them to 7, or is Colorado just going to run, Seattle show and it's going to be done in 4 or 5? I I'm not 100% sure, but I'm not convinced with their goaltending, and I know people might disagree with me on that, and that's fine. You can rip me in the comments, but when your two goaltenders have an 895 and an 886 heading into the playoffs, I don't really care about a winning record. I care about, are they going to be able to stop the puck? And in my opinion, based on who their opponent is, I'm not 100% sure they'll be able to do that consistently for a playoff series.
So, my concerns for the Seattle Kraken are the following: goaltending, which I completely agree with. Their penalty kill that's ranked 21st. Their
Yeah.
face-off percentage that's ranked 31st. And that was my biggest concern right before the trade deadline for Seattle. I thought that they had to add some pieces at center because I thought that they were lacking at that position. Yes, you have Matty Beniers, but once you look at the other guys, yeah, Yanni Gord, he's versatile. He could play as a winger and a
Yeah.
center, but I would prefer him as a winger, in my opinion. But when you have so much winger depth, obviously Yanni Gord's going to be shifted to the center. But when you're ranked 31st in the league and you're facing off against the Stanley Cup champions, and yes, they don't have the best save face off percentage either, but you have to take into account, like I said before, a lot of centers on that team got injured and they did lose Nazem Kadri, but they did bring in Lars Eller, who's a playoff performer, and he's very good at face-offs.
Yeah.
So he's very key in this situation right now where Seattle is going to be facing off against Colorado centermen. So in terms of centermen, Colorado wins. In terms of wingers, I would say because there's so many goals distributed on each of these lines, I would say it goes to Seattle. In terms of defense, obviously it's going to go to Colorado when you have Makar, Gerard, um, Bowen Byram as well. The list goes on. They add Jack Johnson, they bring him back. They have Eric Johnson. A lot of guys that were a part of that Stanley Cup team last year. I can't count them out in terms of defense. Yes,
Yeah.
Seattle's defense is underrated, but can it handle the likes of Makar and others? I don't think so. In terms of goaltending, like you said, Colorado wins this. So my take is that Colorado wins this in either 5 or 6 games. But Seattle's really going to have to adjust themselves to Colorado's game. And, a lot of people are going to say, well, they don't have Gabriel Landeskog, but they were a successful team no matter what. They finished first in their division and they didn't have Gabriel Landeskog for that time. So you have to give credit
Yeah.
where it's due, essentially. And I do believe
And
that, Burakovsky not being there obviously hurts them as well because he has a lot of playoff experience too. And he won the Stanley Cup against Colorado, which kind of sucks that he won't be facing his former team.
yeah, but I think like going into Colorado, and I know that people are going to look at this and say, oh, but Colorado's dealing with a lot of injuries. They've dealt with injuries all year. If you look at the guys that are injured currently, Cogliano is out, Makar is out. Well, I think he'll probably play game one, but I'm not sure how big of to an extent his injury is. What I do know is that he's missed some time lately. Josh Manson's another one that was out for a little while. He hasn't really returned, and obviously Gabriel Landeskog is the big one as well. But they were out with Landeskog from the beginning of the year, so Colorado was able to make do without him. The thing with Colorado is we obviously, they're the Cup champs. McKinnon had a fantastic season. Rantanen had a fantastic season. Those were their two main guys. Obviously, Kel McCarr, 66 points in 60 games was fantastic. But they got a lot of guys that really stepped up as well. JT Compher really took that second line role really well, 52 points in 82 games. Arturi Lehkonen, 51 points in 64 games, including 21 goals. Devin Tays had a 50-point year despite everything. Natrushkin in 53 games had 47 points, continuing from where he was last year as well. And, it's kind of been really an interesting situation for Colorado. The thing with Colorado is that, their injuries have played a factor. And as much as that, it's also been a situation of they're in this weird position where they're a good team, but I don't know if they're better than they are last year, right? And last year they were really good, but they lost Burakovsky, like you said. Darcy Kemper is no longer their goaltender. It's now Alexander Georgiev. And look, although Colorado, they're seventh in the league in goals forward. They're 12th in the 12th in the league in goals forward, seventh in the league in goals against, which means they didn't let in a lot of goals this season. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that Georgiev was on a 918, right, and Francouz was at a 915, which played a big factor in that. I think for me, it's a pretty obvious series to predict, and it's not because I don't believe in Seattle. It's just because Colorado's got that experience, and in the playoff series, when you have the experience and you have guys that have won a Stanley Cup before, and you have guys that are familiar with the system and understand it completely, and have gone through the pain of four straight series, I think you have the upper hand for sure. And with how good Georgiev played and with how good Colorado was able to deal with those injuries and, like you said, finish first in their division, I think this is pretty much a no-brainer to go to 4 or 5 games. But what I want to see, and this is for Seattle Kraken fans who are going to watch our videos and see this, I want Seattle to put up a fight. I really want Seattle to upset Colorado, right? I want to see a great story here for Seattle because I think it's a fantastic story. I think they've had a lot of guys that have overachieved, but a lot of guys that have really fully reached their potential as well. And I'm super excited to see what they're going to do. But I would love to see Seattle absolutely um, create a big story out of this and potentially upset the Colorado Avalanche. And I believe they can, right? But I don't know if they're going to have enough to do it. That's why I'm going Colorado in 5. But it's not I'm not trying to disrespect Seattle fans. I'm really not. I'm high on your team. I like your team. I think that they've got a lot of promise. I think if there's one area they need to improve on next season, um, as you know, moving forward, unless I get proven completely wrong, is their goaltending situation. But besides that, I think they've got a very good thing going, and they got to just keep building and seeing what they're capable of doing, not only now but for future years also.
Yeah, and just thinking about this in general, Vince Dunn, he's going to
Yeah,
be a key factor into this, and he had a fantastic season, one of the best defensemen this year.
yeah,
Matty Benier is, in my opinion, the best rookie in the NHL this year. But
yeah.
Yanni Gourde, a guy who won 2 Stanley Cups, the Tampa Bay Lightning, playing a key role on that third line. You also have Arturi Lekkinen on Colorado's end, who's such a clutch player and was clutch for the Montreal Canadiens heading to the finals, and was clutch for the Colorado Avalanche winning the Stanley Cup. So you got to take that into account as well. This is going to be a fun series. I'm expecting a lot of goals. Um, because of their situation for both teams. Both teams are running what a 1A, 1B. There's not really a clear starter, in my opinion. So it's going to be exciting in terms
Well,
of.
in Colorado, there is. Georgiev played 62 games. So,
Okay. So I mean, I'm wrong about that, I guess. But essentially at the start of the season they were running what a 1A, 1B. But
yeah,
Gorgiev.
that's what it looked like it was going to be. And then Francouz got injured, and Georgiev just played majority of the games.
Yeah, and it's also gonna be fun seeing Brandon Tanev also in the playoffs, and he
Yeah,
hasn't been in the playoffs since his time with Pittsburgh. So it's gonna be
yeah.
a pretty exciting one. I do see Colorado winning it, and even though I've been such a huge Seattle Kraken supporter this year, and I've been rooting for them, they're such underdogs in my opinion. Um, Unfortunately, it's gonna be a short-lived series, so I would say 5 games for Colorado, and we'll see what happens. But guys, I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Who wins this series, the Colorado Avalanche or the Seattle Kraken? Please make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel already. We'll have to have debates in the comment section below, and don't forget to enjoy yourselves throughout this first round because there's a lot of exciting matchups. And if you haven't watched our other prediction videos, please take the time to watch those videos throughout the first round. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of the Young Guns Podcast.